Sister-in-law's body is precious. If these fish bones aren't picked out clean, I'll feel terrible. Lin Rutang blushed and looked at me provocatively. Manny, thanks for the Marquise's consideration. The Marquise's skill is indeed superior. The two of them acted as if no one else was present, treating me, the legitimate wife, as nothing. I sat in the seat of honor, watching this scene, and heavily set down my teacup on the table. Since the Marquis loves picking out bones so much, then pick to your heart's content. Xiao Wangyue frowned, about to scold me for being inconsiderate. Behind me, 2 armored personal guards from the Duke Dingguo's manor had already closed in like iron towers. Simone, come. Press the Marquis down on the chair for me. Go to the kitchen and bring up all 100 of those bony crucian carp. If the Marquis doesn't pick clean the bones from all 100 fish, no one is allowed to let him leave. Ladies, can we talk about this top-tier petty revenge? He wanted to act like husband of the year for his poor, helpless sister-in-law. So our Queen Ruyan said, say less, here is 100 more. Having your elite military guards hold your cheating husband hostage to pick microscopic fish bones at sword point all night is the exact level of unhinged energy I live for. Play stupid games, win stupid bony prizes. If even one bone is missing, I'll throw him out of the manor. Shen Ruyan, have you gone mad? Xiao Wangyue finally snapped out of his shock, abruptly stood up, and tried to break free. He was the dignified Marquis Yong'an, with a hereditary title personally bestowed by the emperor. How could he be humiliated like this by 2 guards, however? The personal guards of my Duke Dingguo's manor had crawled out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood with my father in the northern border. They only recognized military orders, not Marquis titles. Zone of the guards didn't even move an eyebrow. His palm leaf fan-sized hand merely applied a bit of force. A crack sound. Xiao Wangyue's shoulder bone let out a crisp crack, and his entire body was pressed firmly back into the armchair, unable to move. His face twisted in severe pain, veins bulging on his forehead. Outrageous! Do you know who this Marquis is? How dare you lay hands on this Marquis? I will petition His Majesty to execute all 9 generations of your families. He roared himself hoarse, trying to use his status to intimidate. Unfortunately, he picked the wrong target. I let out a cold laugh, slowly stood up, and walked to stand before him. Looking down at him from above, Xiao Wangyue, you seem to have forgotten. This is the Yong'an Marquis Manor, but more importantly, it is my residence, Shen Ruyan's residence. My people only listen to me. As for executing 9 generations, I reached out my hand and lightly traced my fingernail across his cheek, flushed red with anger. By all means, try it. Let's see whether the 9 generations of your Yong'an Marquis Manor are tougher, or whether my Dingguo Duke Manor's blade is sharper. My voice was soft, yet like an ice-quenched poisoned needle, making his entire body shudder. The arrogant flames in his eyes were instantly extinguished by more than half. Replacing them was an unbelievable fear. He had forgotten. For a year of marriage, I yielded everywhere, managed the Marquis Manor for him, mediated with my father on his behalf, allowing him to go from an idle Marquis with only an empty title back to the imperial court, wielding real power. My docility made him forget what I was truly like. I am the only legitimate daughter of Dingguo Duke Shenjian. It is that Shen Ruyan, who dared to shoot an arrow through a traitorous general at the hunting grounds at just 13 years old. It is that Shen Ruyan whom all the young masters of noble families in the capital respectfully and fearfully call the jade-faced Rakshasa. At this moment, the kitchen steward was already sweating profusely, leading servants as they brought up plate after plate of steamed crucian carp. The fishy smell mixed with hot steam instantly filled the entire banquet hall. 100 crucian carp, piled up like a small mountain. Each one stared with eyes that wouldn't close in death, as if mocking Xiao Wangyue's naivety. Lin Rutang's pitiful face had long been scared, completely bloodless. She stood up trembling, wanting to open her mouth to plead for mercy. Sister Ruyan, my gaze swept over like a blade. Do you have a place to speak here? Or perhaps you'd also like to taste what it is like to eat 100 fish? She choked at my words, the rest of her words all stuck in her throat, her whole body shaking like autumn leaves in the wind. I paid her no more attention. From a personal guard's waist, I slowly drew out his saber. The blade gleamed brightly, cold light radiating in all directions. I placed the blade tip lightly against the back of Xiao Wangyue's hand. The icy touch made his entire body shudder, as if electrocuted. Lord Marquis, I leaned down, whispering in his ear, my voice as gentle as lovers' murmurs. Begin. 100 fish, 10,000 bones. If you can't finish picking them out, get lost. Xiao Wangyu's pupils constricted sharply. He was afraid. This realization made him feel utterly humiliated, yet he couldn't resist the trembling that came from the depths of his soul. Shen Ruoyan, you can't do this to me. His voice was trembling. I am your husband, a court official. This is contempt for the law, the behavior of a shrew. I snorted with laughter, as if I'd heard the biggest joke in the world. Husband. I straightened up and lightly patted his face with the flat of the blade. When you were picking out bones for that sickly widowed sister-in-law of yours, how come you didn't remember you were my husband? When you were exchanging flirtatious glances with her in front of all the servants, making me a laughingstock, how come you didn't remember you were my husband? The law? My voice suddenly turned cold. On my turf, I, Shen Ruoyan's word, is the law. My personal guard stepped forward and placed a pair of silver chopsticks and an empty plate with a loud clang heavily in front of Xiao Wangyu. Lord Marquis, please proceed. The guard's voice was emotionless, like a cold stone. Xiao Wangyu had glared at me fiercely, his eyes full of resentment and unwillingness. He knew that today I was determined to humiliate him. He attempted a final struggle, casting a pleading gaze toward Lin Ruotang. Lin Ruotang was currently crying like pear blossoms in the rain, on the verge of tears. She received Xiao Wangyu's gaze, mustered up her courage, and dropped to her knees with a thud. Sister Ruoyan, I beg you, please let the Marquis go. It is all my fault. I shouldn't have let the Marquis debone fish for me. Punish me instead. Punish me however you want. She cried while crawling on her knees toward my feet, trying to hug my legs. What a delicate and pitiful white lotus flower. Too bad the thing I hate most is exactly this type. I didn't even move. My personal guard had already stepped forward and lifted her up from the ground like picking up a chick. You want to debone fish too? I raised an eyebrow at her. Fine, I'll grant your wish. Simone, and bring another 100 crucian carp for Madame Lin. Since you two are so deeply devoted to each other, debone them together, and be a pair of pitiful lovebirds suffering together. That'll make quite a tale. Lin Ruotang's crying stopped abruptly. She stared at me with terrified wide eyes, as if looking at a demon making her, a pampered widow from an official's family, do this kind of rough work for an entire night. She instantly didn't dare cry anymore and shook her head repeatedly. No, that is not what I meant. Then shut up, I shouted sternly. Get back to your seat and watch carefully. Watch how your dear Marquise picks out these thousands upon thousands of fish bones for you, one by one. The guard released his hand, and Lin Ruotang collapsed limply to the ground. She struggled to crawl back to her seat, curling up in the chair, not daring to make another sound. The entire banquet hall fell silent as death. Only Xiao Wangyu's heavy panting remained. I sheathed my saber and returned to the head seat, pouring myself a cup of hot tea. Xiao Wangyu, I leisurely blew on the tea leaves. My patience is limited. If you don't get to work, I'll have to do it for you. Before the words had even finished, the guard pressing his shoulder increased the force in his hand. Under the intense pain, Xiao Wangyu finally broke down. Trembling, he picked up the silver chopsticks, took a piece of fish meat, and began this long and humiliating torment. When the first fish bone was picked out, Xiao Wangyu's complexion had already turned extremely ugly. Crucian carp bones are as fine and dense as hair, small and numerous. Especially those intermuscular bones, deeply hidden in the fish meat, extremely difficult to separate. He had lived in pampered luxury all his life. When had he ever done such meticulous work? After just a few picks, a sharp fish bone pierced into his fingertip. Hiss. He gasped in pain, instinctively wanting to withdraw his hand. But that gleaming saber lay right there on the edge of the table beside his hand. The blade reflected a chilling light in the candlelight, like a viper's forked tongue, constantly reminding him of my threat. He could only grit his teeth and pull out that thorn, watching the tiny drop of blood seeping from his fingertip, the humiliation in his eyes almost solidifying into something tangible. I sat at ease in the host's seat, sipping tea and eating pastries, as if what was happening before my eyes wasn't torture, but an interesting theatrical performance. Time trickled away bit by bit, from the hour of the dog to the hour of the pig, then to the hour of the rat. The candles in the banquet hall had been replaced round after round. The dishes on the table had long grown cold, yet that mountain of fish seemed to show no signs of getting smaller. Xiao Wangyu's movements gradually shifted from initial clumsiness and anger to mechanical numbness. His forehead was covered in cold sweat, sliding down his cheeks and dripping onto the fish meat before him. His wrists were already unbearably sore, his fingers twitching uncontrollably from the prolonged delicate movements. His eyes, from having to make out those tiny fish bones, were strained red and swollen, riddled with bloodshot veins. The dual torture of mind and body nearly crushed his will to pieces. During this time, he attempted to cut corners, mixing some small bones with the fish meat and tossing them away. But the personal guard standing behind him had eyes sharper than a hawk's. "My Lord Marquis, there are still 3 bones in this piece of meat." The cold voice rang out. Xiao Wangyue's movements froze, and he could only pick up that piece of fish meat again in humiliation, under the guard's supervision, picking out those 3 tiny bones one by one. Despair engulfed him like a tidal wave. He finally couldn't take it anymore. Smack! He slammed his chopsticks heavily on the table, jerked his head up, and glared at me with bloodshot eyes. "Shen Ruian, what the hell do you want? You've humiliated me enough, tormented me enough. Do you want me to die here or what?" I put down my teacup and slowly stood up. I walked up to him and picked up the small plate of fish bones he had sorted out. Then, right in front of him, I flipped the plate over and slammed it onto the ground. Crash! Hundreds of tiny fish bones scattered all over the floor. His hard work of several hours was thus easily destroyed by me. "You?" Xiao Wangyue trembled all over with rage, choked on his breath, and started coughing violently. I looked down at him, my eyes devoid of any warmth. "What do I want, Xiao Wangyue? Do you still not understand? From the moment you fawned over another woman right in front of me, you stopped being human to me. You are just a piece of trash that made me lose face and needs to be dealt with. Picking out fish bones is only the first step. The game has only just begun." My words struck his heart like a heavy hammer. He looked at my cold, unfamiliar face and finally realized the woman before him was not the wife who deeply loved him and could be manipulated at will. The last trace of hope in his eyes was completely extinguished. In its place was boundless fear and regret. He silently picked up his chopsticks and started over again. This time, he never said another word. Throughout the entire hall, only the occasional crisp yet desperate sound of chopsticks and plates colliding remained. Lin Rutang stayed curled up in a chair in the corner the whole time. She didn't dare leave, nor did she dare make a sound. Without my word, she didn't even have the courage to move her toes. At first, she still held onto a sliver of hope. She thought I was just angry for the moment, making a fuss. And once my anger subsided, Xiao Wangyu would coax me a bit and the matter would pass. After all, what woman doesn't love her own husband? Moreover, Xiao Wangyu was so handsome and extraordinary, and a marquis at that. She was even calculating in her heart how, once the storm passed, she would use even gentler tactics to dig Xiao Wangyu's heart away from me, bit by bit, completely. However, as time passed, that bit of luck and smugness on her face gradually turned into terror and unease. She watched as Xiao Wangyu had transformed from a high-spirited marquis into a prisoner with numb eyes and trembling hands. Watched as I calmly sipped my tea, as if appreciating a play whose script had long been written. She understood I wasn't throwing a tantrum. I truly intended to destroy Xiao Wangyu. A chill shot up from the soles of her feet straight to the top of her head. She began to feel afraid. She is afraid that the next person I am going to deal with is her. Her tears flowed down again, this time no longer acting but fear from the bottom of her heart. She secretly looked at me, her eyes full of pleading. I noticed her gaze and slowly shifted my eyes over. Our eyes met. I raised the teacup in my hand toward her and smiled faintly. That smile, in her eyes, was more terrifying than a demon. She was so scared that she shuddered violently, immediately lowered her head, stared fixedly at the hem of her dress, and never dared to look at me again. I withdrew my gaze, filled with contempt in my heart. This is the woman Xiao Wangyu cherishes at the tip of his heart. A waste who only knows how to act fragile in front of men, and when facing real danger is scared shitless. For such a thing, he actually dared to challenge my bottom line. Shen Ruoyan. It is utterly laughable. Fine then, just let her watch closely here. A sleepless night. On the eastern horizon, a pale white of fish belly appeared. The first ray of morning light passed through the window lattice, illuminating the mess throughout the room. It also illuminated Xiao Wangyu's face, ashen as death. He finally finished picking. 100 crucian carps, piled into 2 small mountains of separated flesh and bone. One mountain was snow-white delicate fish meat, the other was densely packed fish bones piled up like a mountain. His hands were no longer his own. His 10 fingers were red and swollen, covered in tiny bloody cuts, trembling violently beyond control. His wrists and shoulders ached so badly, it felt like they were about to break. His eyes, from not closing all night, were bloodshot from exhaustion, his gaze hollow and completely lifeless. He just collapsed in the chair like a puppet whose soul had been sucked out. In one night, that elegant and conceited Marquis of Yong'an had disappeared. Lin Rutang had long since fainted from fear on a chair in the corner, only to be awakened by the cold. At this moment, her face was deathly pale, shivering, without even the courage to glance at me. I stood up and stretched. A night of waiting hadn't made me feel tired. On the contrary, I was full of energy. I walked in front of Xiao Wangyu and lightly kicked with my toe at the mountain of fish bones piled before him. "Marquise, you've worked hard," I said with a light laugh. "Your skills have really improved tremendously." He numbly raised his head, his hollow gaze looking at me, his lips wriggling a few times, yet unable to make any sound. He thought the torture had ended. He thought that as long as he endured it, I would, like before, just throw a tantrum, and ultimately still forgive him. Too bad. He was wrong. I never do meaningless things. This night of torment wasn't to make him repent. It was to make him remember how his life fell from the clouds into hell. "Luvlu," I spoke indifferently. My personal headmaid Luvlu immediately walked in from outside the door. In her hands she held a tray. On the tray were a brush and ink, an ink pad, and a divorce agreement written last night. I picked up that sheet of paper and unfolded it before his eyes. "Xiao Wangyue, sign it." My voice wasn't loud, but in the deathly silent morning, it was like a thunderclap exploding in his ears. His hollow gaze finally showed a trace of fluctuation. He stared fixedly at the 3 large characters divorce agreement on that sheet of paper, his eyes filled with disbelief. "Divorce." His voice was hoarse like sandpaper scraping. "Shenruian, you want to divorce me?" "What else?" I questioned back with a trace of mockery in my tone. "Keep you around so you can continue performing the devoted uncle and sister-in-law drama with your good sister-in-law, bringing shame to my Duke Dingguo's household. No, I don't agree." He was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, suddenly becoming agitated. "I am a marquis. You are the marquise's wife. This marriage was bestowed by His Majesty. You can't just divorce me like this." He seemed to be grasping at his last lifeline. "Bestowed by His Majesty." I laughed with utmost sarcasm. "Xiao Wangyu, have you forgotten that the current empress is my own aunt? Do you think you, a marquis who regained power only by relying on your wife's family, have more face? Or do I, the empress's own niece, have more face?" The color drained from his face instantly. "That is right. How could he forget? I am not only the daughter of the Duke of Dingguo, but also the empress's own niece. This marriage, rather than being bestowed by His Majesty, was more like a favor the empress requested from His Majesty for my sake. He thought marrying me meant climbing up to a high branch, but he forgot that this high branch could smash him to pieces at any time. Sign." I slammed the divorce papers in front of him, my tone brooking no argument. He struggled to get up from the chair, trying to grab my hand. "I won't dare again. I have nothing more to do with Lin Rutang, please. For the sake of our 1 year as husband and wife, give me one more chance." "Husband and wife bond." I looked at him coldly. "When you picked the first fishbone for her, the bond between you and me was already broken." I couldn't be bothered to waste more words on him, hold him down. The personal guards behind me immediately stepped forward and pressed him firmly into the chair again. Another personal guard grabbed his still trembling hand and dipped it in ink. "No, don't!" he screamed in terror. I stepped forward myself, gripped his wrist, and forced him to write his name at the end of the divorce papers. The handwriting was crooked and twisted, like ghostly scribbles. But that wasn't important. What mattered was, he had signed it. I grabbed his finger again, pressed it hard into the red ink pad, then stamped it heavily onto his name. Done. I took back the divorce papers, blowing on the ink and stamp. "From now on, you and I part ways amicably, no longer connected." I handed the divorce papers to Le Fainliu and turned to leave. "Wait!" Xiao Wangyue roared hoarsely. "Shenruian, you can't just leave like this. This is our home." I stopped in my tracks, looked back at him, a brilliant smile appearing on my face. Number, this place is no longer that. The moment my words fell, the main gate of the Marquise's mansion was suddenly pushed open from outside with a loud bang. 100-strong force of Duke Dingguo's personal guards, clad in black armor, wielding long halberds, marching in perfect unison, surged in like a tide. Leading them was my eldest brother, the Shen family's heir, Shen Changfeng. He wore full military attire, his face stern and cold, a long sword at his waist, his eyes sharp as an eagle's. Without even glancing at Xiao Wangyue slumped in his chair, he walked straight up to me. "Little sister, you've suffered." His voice carried a trace of heartache and towering fury. I shook my head. "Big brother, I am fine." He nodded, then turned around to face the entire Marquis manor, his voice booming like a great bell. "Hear my command. All dowry items under the eldest Mrs. name, everything recorded in the registry, every needle and thread, every blade of grass and tree, pack it all up and take it away. If any servant of the Marquis manor dares to obstruct or hide any items, they shall all be considered as thieves stealing from our Duke Dingguo Manor's property. Kill them on the spot. No need to ask for permission." Yes, 100 personal guards responded in unison, their voices shaking the roof tiles. Xiao Wangyue and all the servants in the manor were scared silly. When had they ever seen such a scene? This wasn't moving dowry items. This was clearly a house raid. "Shen Changfeng, you are going too far." Xiao Wangyue struggled and roared in fury. Only then did my big brother turn his gaze toward him, his eyes full of disdain and contempt. "Bully you?" He let out a cold laugh. "Xiao Wangyue, you are not worthy. Since you dared to humiliate someone from my Shen family, you should have expected this day would come." Having said that, he paid him no more attention. The personal guards immediately sprang into action. They were well trained with clear division of labor. One team rushed into the storeroom, and according to the dowry list, began inventorying and moving those gold, silver, and jade items, antiques, calligraphy, and paintings, silk and satin. One team rushed into my courtyard, taking all my personal belongings, along with the precious flowers and plants in the yard, digging them up by the roots and carefully loading them onto carts. Another team, holding the registry, patrolled throughout the entire Marquis manor. "This rosewood 8 immortals table in the hall is the eldest Mrs. Dowry. Take it away." "This Taihu stone rockery in the garden is the eldest Mrs. Dowry. Take it away." "These rare books from the previous dynasty in the study are the eldest Mrs. Dowry. Take it away." The entire Yong'an Marquis manor instantly turned into a moving site for the Duke Dingguo's manor's private storage. Boxes, cabinets, tables, and chairs. Ornaments, anything that had even the slightest connection to me. Shen Ruoyan was mercilessly carried out. The servants of the Marquis manor huddled in corners, trembling with fear, not even daring to breathe loudly. Xiao Wangyu watched helplessly as his proud home was emptied out in just an hour, leaving only bare walls and some cheap, rough furniture. His heart was bleeding. He finally understood that what he had lost was not just a wife, but also overwhelming wealth and a shortcut to rise to the top. However, this was not the end. After everything was loaded onto the carts, my eldest brother walked to the imposing gilded main gate of the Marquis manor. He examined it for a moment, then spoke coldly. "I recall that this gate was also renovated using the gold leaf and Nanmu wood from my sister's dowry, wasn't it?" A steward immediately stepped forward and respectfully answered, "Yes, young lord, that is correct." "Very good." Shen Changfeng nodded. "Tear it down. Take it with us. I am howling. Taking the flat-screen television or the fancy couch in a divorce is one thing, but repossessing the literal front doors, iconic behavior. He thought he was a self-made marquis, but Ruoyan funded his entire aesthetic. Taking back the golden doors and stripping the custom designer robes right off his back, left him standing there in his underwear and his regrets. We absolutely stan a financially literate queen and her fiercely protective big brother. Tear down the gate? Xiao Wangyue almost thought he had misheard. He sprang up from his chair and rushed to the doorway like a crazed beast. "Shen Changfeng, Shen Ruoyan, you can't do this. This is the Yong'an Marquis manor. It is the court's face. You are tearing down my door. Are you trying to rebel? The gate of a Marquis manor is the face of a family. Tearing down the door is equivalent to stomping that face hard into the ground, then grinding it a few more times. This is an utter humiliation." My eldest brother, Shen Changfeng, didn't even bother to lift an eyelid. The hat of rebellion is too big for you to put on me. He walked up to Xiao Wangye, his height and presence forming an absolute crushing dominance. I am just taking back what belongs to my Shen family. This door was built with my Shen family's money, so naturally it belongs to my Shen family. You got a problem with that? He stared into Xiao Wangyue's eyes, asking word by word. You can go report me to the Court of Judicial Review, or you can impeach me before the Emperor. I, Shen Changfeng, will take it on. Xiao Wangyue was so intimidated by the murderous aura honed from mountains of corpses and seas of blood that he couldn't speak. Report him. Report him with what? If he dared to go, Shen Changfeng would dare to publicize his scandalous affair with his widowed sister-in-law in court, until everyone knew. When that time came, the only one who'd lose face would be himself. He could only watch helplessly as those personal guards took out their tools, and in no time at all, removed that gilded door representing all his glory and dignity from the doorframe, and carried it away like a wooden plank. Cold wind howled and poured into the empty hall, blowing on Xiao Wangyue's body. It chilled him through and through, inside and out. Looking at this dilapidated, bare-walled marquise mansion before him, his whole person collapsed. He was finished. I slowly walked up to him. My gaze fell upon the luxurious brocade robe on his body. This robe was something I had sewn for him by hand for his birthday last month. It was made of the finest cloud brocade, with the collar and cuffs embroidered with auspicious cloud patterns in gold thread. On ordinary days, he treasured it beyond measure. This piece of clothing is pretty nice too, I said softly. Hearing this, his body stiffened. I smiled at him, but that smile made his hair stand on end. Take it off. What? He couldn't believe his ears. I said, take it off. My voice turned cold. This fabric, this gold thread, are all from my dowry. I don't want things from the Shen family worn on an ungrateful dog. You. Xiao Wangyue's lips turned purple with rage, his whole body trembling. A scholar can be killed but not humiliated. Shen Ruyan was going to completely strip away his dignity. Do it. I couldn't be bothered to waste any more words on him. 2 personal guards immediately stepped forward and grabbed him like a chicken. Then, in front of all the servants, they roughly tore at the brocade robe on his body. Riep, the luxurious cloud brocade tore with the sound. Soon, that brocade robe he was so proud of was stripped off and thrown on the ground. He stood there wearing only a white inner garment, exposed to the cold morning wind, as wretched as a stray dog. I walked forward and picked up the tattered robe from the ground. Green Willow, take it back and burn it. Yes, miss. After doing all this, I didn't spare him another glance and turned to walk out. Behind me came his desperate and venomous roar. Shen Ruyan, I, Xiao Wangyue, cannot coexist under the same sky as you. I didn't stop walking, only sneered inwardly. Cannot coexist under the same sky, Xiao Wangyue. You'll soon understand. You don't even have the qualification to be my enemy. The carriage of the Duke Dingguo's manor moved smoothly along the main streets of the capital. I returned to my boudoir from before I was married, where everything still remained as it was. Incense smoke curled upward, warm as spring, compared to that emptied marquee manor with howling cold winds. It was like 2 different worlds. After bathing and changing clothes, I went to father's study. Me father, the great Zhou's Duke Dingguo, the guardian deity of the northern border, Shen Zhan, was sitting behind his desk wiping his sword Zhenbei, that never left his side. He wasn't wearing court robes, just a simple black tight-fitting outfit, but that iron-blooded aura from years on the battlefield filled the entire study with an oppressive atmosphere. My eldest brother, Shen Changfeng, standing to the side, had already briefly explained the whole situation. My father's movements, from beginning to end, never stopped. He didn't even lift his head to glance at me once. Only after polishing the long sword until it gleamed with a cold light and sheathing it again, did he slowly speak, his voice calm and ice-cold. That Xiao Wangyue, where is he now? Reporting to father, he is still in that empty shell of a marquise manor, Shen Changfeng answered. My father nodded. Changfeng, your son is here. Pass down my words. From today on, within the capital, whoever dares sell Xiao Wangyue a grain of rice or a foot of cloth is an enemy of my Duke Dingguo manor. Whoever dares give him convenience is an enemy of my Duke Dingguo manor. He paused, a trace of terrifying killing intent flashing in his eyes. I want him unable to survive in the capital. Yes, Shen Changfeng accepted the order. a glint of excitement flashing in his eyes. This was the Shen family's way of doing things. When cutting the grass, you must pull out the roots. So only then did my father turn his gaze toward me, that sharp look instantly becoming gentle. "Yanner, come here." I walked to his side. He took my hand and looked at me. "Father knows now. It is father's fault. Back then, I shouldn't have agreed to this marriage just because he had some learning. I've let you suffer." My nose tingled, and I shook my head. "Father, it is not your fault. It is me who failed to see through him. Silly child." My father sighed and patted the back of my hand. "But if we've made a mistake, just fix it. We Shen family don't take this kind of filthy treatment. You don't need to worry about this matter anymore. At tomorrow's morning court, father will give you an answer." I nodded. I knew that once my father made a move, it would be thunderous and unstoppable. Xiao Wangyue's time had come. Coming out of father's study, mother pulled me straight into the palace. With such a huge commotion at the Yong'an Marquis Manor, the palace couldn't possibly not know. Inside Fengyi Palace, my aunt, the current empress, had already dismissed everyone. She held my hand, looked at me, her eyes slightly red. "Good child, you've suffered. Aunt, don't say anything. Aunt understands everything." The empress patted my hand, her gaze suddenly becoming sharp. "A mere little marquis of Yong'an. He has eaten the heart of a bear and the gall of a leopard, daring to bully my Shen family's daughter like this. Who does he think he is, if not for your sake? With those meager accomplishments of his, would he even deserve to inherit the title?" The empress's fury was from the bottom of her heart, though she held the honored position of mother of the nation. In her bones still flowed the fierce and protective blood of the Duke Dingguo's estate. "Don't worry," she looked at me, her tone resolute. "This matter will absolutely not end like this. A subject who is unfaithful to his first wife and disrespectful to an imperial marriage decree, your majesty keeping him around will only taint the court." I understood her meaning. She was going to take action herself. The emperor might consider the bond between sovereign and subject, might think this was a family matter and inconvenient to intervene. But the empress had plenty of ways to make the emperor have to intervene. "Tonight, I will personally go to the Yangxin Hall." The empress let out a cold laugh. "I want to ask his majesty, when a marriage he personally decreed is trampled on like this, does he still want his dignity as the son of heaven or not?" Pillow talk sometimes is more deadly than the clash of swords in court, especially when the one whispering is the empress, who controls the inner palace and whose maternal family's power reaches the heavens. Xiao Wangyue's crime had escalated from a family matter to an affair of state. The one he offended was no longer just me, Shen Ruoyan, alone, but the Duke Dingguo's estate, the empress, and even the emperor's own authority. His fate was already sealed. The next day, Daxing Hall, the morning court bell had just rung. Xiao Wangyue stood in official robes at the very end of the civil officials. He hadn't slept all night, his eyes bloodshot, his expression haggard, looking utterly wretched. Without the faade of the Marquis manor, without the prestige of fine garments, that bit of so-called Marquis bearing he had was completely gone. The surrounding officials all kept their distance from him like avoiding the plague, constantly casting him contemptuous and schadenfreude-filled glances. He stood there barely holding himself together, still clinging to a thread of hope in his heart. He thought that no matter how domineering the Duke Dingguo's manor was, they wouldn't dare openly move against him in the imperial court. However, he was still too naive. The morning court session had just begun. The left censor-in-chief of the censorate, Lord Zhang, known as the iron-faced censor, holding his court tablet, stepped forward from the ranks. "Your Majesty, this subject has a memorial to submit. This subject impeaches Marquis Yong'an Xiao Wangyue for moral corruption and misconduct." As soon as these words were spoken, the entire court was shocked. Everyone's eyes focused on Xiao Wangyue. Xiao Wangyue's face instantly turned pale. Censor Zhang's voice, impassioned and fervent, resonated throughout the entire hall. Marquis Yong'an Xiao Wangyue, as an official of the imperial court, actually behaved intimately with his widowed sister-in-law at a family banquet, exchanging flirtatious glances, disregarding human ethics, and treating his lawful wife as if she didn't exist. This is the first charge, a grave deficiency in moral character. His wife is the daughter of the Duke of Dingguo, a marriage bestowed personally by His Majesty and the Empress. Xiao Wangyue's actions are not only an insult to his lawful wife, but also a contempt for the imperial grace. showing no regard for his majesty and the empress. This is the second charge, disrespect as a subject. If one cannot manage family affairs, how can one govern the state? Such a person of corrupt virtue who shows no respect for the sovereign, how can he stand in the court and serve as an example for all officials? I humbly beseech your majesty to severely punish this scoundrel, to set the record straight, and to serve as a warning to others. As soon as Censor Jiang finished speaking, the Minister of Personnel stepped forward. This subject seconds the motion. Xiao Wangyue's conduct is improper. He is unfit to serve as an official. The Minister of Justice stepped forward. This subject seconds the motion. Contempt for imperial grace warrants an additional degree of punishment. The Minister of War, an old subordinate of my father, stepped forward. This subject seconds the motion. I request His Majesty to strip him of his office and revoke his title. For a moment, voices seconding the motion rose one after another in the court. Those who usually had good relations with the Duke of Dingguo's household, or those officials who wanted to do the Duke of Dingguo's household a favor, all stepped forward one by one. Everyone kicks you when you are down. Xiao Wangyue stood there all alone, becoming the target of all arrows. His whole body was ice cold, his hands and feet went weak, and he could barely stand. He never imagined that the retaliation would come so swiftly and so fiercely. This was no longer a simple impeachment. This was an encirclement and suppression led by the Duke of Dingguo's household, intent on destroying him completely. On the dragon throne, the emperor's expression was as gloomy as dark water. Last night the empress had cried her heart out in the hall of mental cultivation for half the night. Her words were more or less the same as Censor Jiang's, but coming from the empress's mouth, the weight was completely different. This was indeed no longer Xiao Wangyue's family matter. This was slapping him, slapping the imperial family's face. He looked at Xiao Wangyue below, whose face was deathly pale and who was swaying as if about to collapse, and a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. For the sake of a woman offending the Duke Dingguo's household, offending the empress. Foolish. For the sake of a woman, making such a huge commotion throughout the city, bringing shame to the imperial family. Even more foolish beyond foolish. What use was there in keeping such a fool, Xiao Wangyue? The emperor finally spoke, his voice devoid of any emotion. Xiao Wangyue jolted and hastily knelt down. This subject is here. What the ministers have said, do you have any objections? This subject, Xiao Wangyue stammered, sweat pouring down like rain. What objections could he have say that the censors were slandering him? At that family banquet, both witness and evidence were present. Say this was his family matter, unrelated to state affairs, that huge hat of contempt for imperial graces coming down on him. He couldn't bear it. He could only kowtow continuously. Your Majesty, spare my life. This subject knows his error. This subject was confused for a moment. Confused, the emperor let out a cold snort. I see you've become arrogant and lost yourself in your success. I betrothed the daughter of the Duke of Dingguo to you in hopes that you would be diligent in your duties and serve the country with loyalty. Not so you could use your in-laws' influence to run wild in the capital and corrupt the court. Summon the emperor slammed the dragon throne. Draft an edict. Marquis Zhongyan Xiao Wangyue is unworthy of his position, of poor character, contemptuous of imperial grace, and unfit to serve as an official. Effective immediately. Strip him of all official positions, revoke his title of Marquis Yong'an, and demote him to commoner status, by imperial decree. The imperial edict fell like a thunderous judgment. Xiao Wangyue's entire body went limp on the cold floor of the Golden Throne Hall. His official position, gone. His title, gone. Everything he had fought for half his life, everything he had obtained by relying on my Shen family, vanished into nothing in less than a day. He went from a lofty marquis to a commoner with nothing. Xiao Wangyue was dragged out of the Daxing Hall by 2 eunuchs, like dragging a dead dog. When he returned to that home, that didn't even have a front gate anymore, dejected and dispirited, he discovered that things were even worse than he had imagined. The Duke of Dingguo's blacklist order had already spread throughout the capital. Not a single rice shop dared to sell rice to him. Those colleagues and old friends who once called him brother, now avoided him like a venomous snake. But what made him break down even more was his reputation. The story of the Marquis picked fish bones for his widowed sister-in-law, and was punished by his wife to pick 100 fishes somehow spread throughout the streets and alleys of the capital overnight. Storytellers turned this incident into a tale and narrated it vividly in tea-houses. Children on the streets turned this incident into a song, clapping their hands and singing it. bone-picking marquis, thick-skinned and shameless, loves his widowed sister-in-law, not his wife, picks bones until his hands tremble. Bone-picking marquis became his new and only title, a title filled with humiliation and mockery. He became the biggest laughingstock of the entire capital. Every time he went out, people would point and gossip about him. Look, that is the bone-picking marquis. Sakes te, what a disgrace. Losing his title for a widow. Serves him right, who told him to offend the tigress of the Duke Dingwo's household. These comments were like sharp knives stabbing into his heart. And the woman for whom he had sacrificed everything. Lin Rutang, upon learning that he had been demoted to commoner status, fled the capital overnight and disappeared without a trace. Her maternal family, in order to distance themselves, even severed ties with her. Zhao Wangyue truly and completely became a lone man, betrayed and abandoned by all. Half a month later, an autumn rain fell, pattering down. The capital was shrouded in a damp and cold chill. In front of the brand new, even more imposing vermilion lacquered gate of the Duke Dingwo's manor, knelt a haggard figure in tattered clothes. It was none other than Zhao Wangyue. In just half a month, he had become so thin that he was unrecognizable, his face covered in stubble, his eyes filled with bloodshot veins. Not a trace of his former elegance remained. There he knelt, ramrod straight in the icy rain. Over and over again, he kowtowed toward the tightly shut gate. Ruian! Ruian! I was wrong. Please just see me once. For the sake of what we once had, spare me. I truly know I was wrong. His voice was hoarse and desperate, sounding especially desolate in the rain. The guards at the entrance looked at him as if he were an annoying fly, too lazy to even drive him away. Because the young lord had given orders, let him kneel. Let him beg. Just don't let him in. Make him taste the deepest despair and regret in this world. I sat by the window in the warm pavilion inside the manor, brewing fresh tea. Outside the window, rain pattered softly. Inside the room, tea fragrance wafted gently. Lao Feilu came in from outside and whispered in my ear, "Miss, that person is still kneeling outside. The rain is getting heavier. I am afraid he'll fall ill." I didn't even lift my head, merely gave a faint, "Miss, should we send him away?" I set down my teacup and raised my eyes. No need. I looked at the curtain of rain outside the window, the corners of my mouth curling into a cold arc. Make him kneel. Doesn't he love playing the victim? Let him play it to his heart's content. It is just that this performance no longer has an audience. This kneeling lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Zhao Wangyue finally couldn't hold on anymore and fainted in the rain. The guards dragged him to the street corner. When he woke up, he saw El Feilu standing in front of him, holding an oil paper umbrella. He thought I had finally softened. He struggled to get up, a glimmer of hope igniting in his eyes. Ruoyan is willing to see me now." El Feilu looked at him, her eyes holding no sympathy, only icy detachment. From her sleeve she handed over a copper coin. "This is from my young lady." Zhao Wangyue froze. Then, as if understanding something, he shook his head frantically. "No, I don't want money. I want to see Ruoyan. Let her come see me." Lil Feilu stepped back, avoiding his dirty hand reaching toward her. "Young Master Zhao, you've got it wrong." She looked down at him from above, conveying my words clearly, word by word. My young lady said, "This copper coin is not for you. It is a reward for the stray dog at the door that has been barking for 3 days. As for you," a smile identical to mine appeared on El Feilifei's face. My young lady asks, "What the hell are you? What the hell are you?" Emotional damage level, infinite. This narcissist knelt in the rain for 3 days thinking he was starring in a romantic drama where she'd eventually forgive him. But Ruoyan handed him a brutal reality check, paying a stray dog for barking but tossing him away like absolute garbage, pure poetry. He wasn't even worth a penny to her anymore. Honey, she wasn't mad. She was done. The ultimate mic drop. These 6 words struck like a thunderbolt, smashing hard onto Shifeo W. Feigi's skull. All his hopes, all his fantasies, were shattered to pieces in this moment. He finally understood. In She Feiyan Ru Feiyan's heart, he wasn't even worth as much as a dog. He was nothing. He watched Lao Feilifei's back as she turned and left, opening his mouth but unable to make any sound. Unable to catch his breath, his throat turned sweet. Ff'd a mouthful of fresh blood sprayed into the cold rain. His vision went black, and he collapsed completely. Later I heard, Jifeo Feng Yufei was rescued and brought back. But after a serious illness, he went mad. All day long, he would sit on the street corner, holding 2 wooden sticks in his hands, muttering non-stop, "Pick bones, I want to pick bones." He became a true madman in the capital, a living joke. As for me, after the divorce, I never remarried. I used my dowry to establish the largest women's academy and workshop in the capital, teaching women to read and write and learn skills to make a living. After my father retired, my eldest brother inherited the title of Duke de Fagen-Feyend. I changed into military attire, took up my father's Jade Feinen beefy sword, and led the 30,000 SH Feinen family troops back to the northern border. I became the first and only female general in the Great Zhou dynasty who held military power. Years later, in the wind and snow of the northern border, I received a letter from the capital. The letter said that the madman named Xiao Wangyu had frozen to death in a dilapidated temple on a cold winter night. In his hands, he was still tightly clutching 2 wooden sticks that he had polished until they were incredibly smooth. After reading the letter, I casually threw it into the fire basin. The firelight reflected on my face. I picked up the wine pot and drank it all in one gulp, facing the snow-filled sky. Past events are nothing more than wine in a cup, dust in the snow. My rebirth as Shen Ruoyan had long begun, and those ants who tried to drag me into the mire will eventually turn to dust in regret and wretchedness. Okay, my gorgeous besties, let's pour one out for the absolute masterpiece that is Shen Ruoyan's glow-up. This isn't just a fun story about petty revenge, it is a masterclass in knowing your worth. How many times do we women shrink ourselves to make our partners feel big? Ruoyan literally hid her fierce, independent, general-level energy to be a docile wife, so her scrub of a husband could feel like a powerful man. And how did he repay her? By publicly humiliating her for a weeping white lotus. But instead of crying it out, our girl woke up and chose scorched earth. She didn't just divorce him. She systematically dismantled his wealth, his reputation, and his career. And the absolute best part, she didn't rush into another romance. She used her massive fortune to build an academy to empower other women, picked up her sword, and became the first female general with real military power. She literally traded in a useless husband for her own army. Talk about leveling up. This story is a fabulous reminder for all of us. Never dim your light for a partner who doesn't appreciate your sparkle if they don't respect the crown. Take back the kingdom now. I clearly need to hear from you down in the comments. Taking the dowry. If you were Ruoyan, what is the absolute pettiest thing you would have repossessed from the house during the breakup? The fragile sister-in-law, did Lin Rutang get off too easy by just running away, or was losing her sugar daddy punishment enough? The petty ex. What is the most creative revenge you've ever seen someone take on a toxic ex? Spill the tea below, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Love you all.